You are listening to the Hiking Radio Network, where we talk the walk with shows by hikers about hikers for everybody.
This is the Hammock Hangers Podcast, where we hang out and talk about everything from hammocks and hammock camping to the group hangs from around the country. All right, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Hammock Hangers Podcast. I am your host, Paul Collins, or also known as Skunkape. I've got my co-host, AJ Glenn, or Phoenix, here.
Hi, everybody.
Today, I think AJ and I are going to go over some myths about hammocks. Now, these are myths that we hear a lot on like social media and everything else. And so we're just going to talk about top 10 and just throwing our input on them.
I definitely hear a lot of these when, especially when I tell some of my coworkers what I'm doing on weekends, like, oh, I'm going to a hang. After I have to explain, what a hang is to people or go hammock camping, I get the weird looks preceded by a lot of these questions. So hopefully if you're new and are interested in trying hammocks, hopefully this will clear up some of the misconceptions. It may also validate some of these myths as well. And if you're an old dog or a veteran hanger, maybe you can add to some of these in the comments below. So let's jump into number one. You can't use a hammock in extreme temperatures, weather, or in extreme buggy environments. So, Paul, how do you hang a hammock when it's really, really hot?
With either no underquilt or a very light underquilt.
Yeah, I mean, I actually really enjoy hammocks a lot more when in the summer, especially here in Florida. We get 1 or 2 cool days a year, and I mean, I would not be camping for most of the year in Florida if were not for hammocks.
Right.
When you're in a hammock in the heat, for example, when we go to the Summer's Last Gasp hang out at Hidden Pond, it's the end of September. It's still hot as all get out here in Florida. We are able to do that because the hammock material breeze. You can catch a lot of the breeze that comes through and the wind that helps cool you off. Even in some cases, you still might need an underquilt, even in the dead of summer. I know Juan uses a underquilt with him every time he goes out, and even when they go out for the hang that they do in July, I try to avoid Florida at all costs in July and August, so I'm not going out there, but there's people that do. I know our friends in South Carolina, their Swamp Buck hang, that some of them say that they still use an underquilt then, so it definitely can be done. Yeah.
I mean, whenever it's hot out, if I can get away with not using an underquilt, I do. Because like you said, you catch that breeze, and you catch a good breeze, and while laying in a hammock, it feels like air conditioning up under you.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
That's what I like. But with that said, especially like here in Florida, sun starts to go down, the mosquitoes start to come out. And that would be about the time that I would want to throw on at least a real light underquilt or something, just to keep those mosquitoes from being able to get through to me.
So one thing that I like to do that doesn't provide a lot of extra insulation when I really don't need it is to use a underquilt protector as an underquilt.
Yeah. Yep. Just throw it on.
Yeah.
Give you that little extra.
Little bit extra layers because, people, another misconception about this that we'll get to in the buggy environments, they think, oh, I have a double layer, so I should be good. Those mosquitoes will tear you up through
especially
2
the
layers
ones down
of
here.
fabrics. Yeah, absolutely. So double layers does not mean that you are completely safe from those little vampires.
Right. I think the only hammock that I've ever been in where I didn't really have to worry a whole lot, which, I mean, kind of self-explanatory also, though, is my Clark hammocks. But that's because it has those pockets, you know. And the bed of the Clarks, I don't even know what type of material that really is, but it's a thicker material.
Yeah,
also.
I want to say like a 70D. I mean, maybe not 70D, but
it might be actually.
Yeah,
it might be a 70D to be honest with you.
Fabric. So, yeah, you can totally hang a hammock in extreme heat and extreme cold. We've talked about numerous people on the podcast, as well as there's plenty of YouTube videos of people going deep into the negatives, still being very, very comfortable.
Shug being one, and then I know last week Rob had talked about going sub-zero temps and everything, which I haven't experienced the sub-zeros yet. Maybe one day
you have fun with that.
At least one night.
At least one night. Yeah.
At least one night.
I hear you. Now, for extreme weather, I will say this, and I can say this with extreme certainty. I have stayed drier in a hammock using even with a tarp with outdoors than I ever did in a cheap tent.
Yep.
You simply
same here.
It just works. And it works a lot better than necessarily. Yeah, you're off the ground. You don't have that coming in. And if you're pitching your tarp, nice, low and tight, you really don't have too much issue with the side. Now, when you're running a bridge, it's a little bit different with the tarp situation, but it still totally can be done.
Yeah.
And if you've got doors, you're golden. You are golden.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, most of the time I do try and use a tarp with doors. I mean, most of mine have doors anyhow. Yeah. I think I have a couple that don't. I do like that little extra, coverage if I need it. Plus, it also, which I think we talk about here in a little bit, it provides a little bit of privacy as well.
Yeah.
If need be. But we'll get into that here in a little bit.
I think, like anything with weather, I don't think that I feel any safer or not safer being in a hammock versus a tent or even an RV. As far as weather goes.
Right. I mean, I've been on some pretty bad storms myself.
Yeah. There's been a lot of, I can think of just
pretty scary thunderstorms.
Yeah. Where there's a lot of praying going involved.
Oh, yeah. But I mean, I'd be praying in a tent or anything else. I mean,
that's
probably
true.
Pray more in a tent.
That's true.
That I didn't float off.
I'll never forget. We were hanging in Hungry Mother State Park in Marion, Virginia. You're unfamiliar with that park. It's a state park in Southwest Virginia, and it's a really, really, really cool state park. Really pretty. They've got hiking trails there, camping, and it's not too far from the AT. It's not too far from Damascus. And we were camping there one summer, and we had this crazy thunderstorm. And it was really cool at first because the mountain range there, the hills are really close together, and it would thunder and it would just roll right down the valley. And it was really, really cool. But then the rain started, pouring down, and we got wind coming in crazy. And I was in my Superfly, and we had my kids and my wife in the large tent because we hadn't gotten the RV yet. And here I am, nice and dry. I'm enjoying the light show. I'm kind of prayed a little bit because it was really, really loud, but still, it was really, I wouldn't trade anything for it. It was really, really awesome. And then all of a sudden I hear, "Hey, Jay, the tent is leaking." And And I internally, I didn't say this to her at the time, but internally I was just like, well, if you would have just been in a hammock, well, none of this would have happened. But yeah, I mean, so I was completely dry, and we had the kids in the hammock, or the kids and the wife in the tent, and they were having to fight the leaks and things like that. We eventually, I think, started to have a conversation of moving them into the truck because the weather was really, really rough that night. But yeah, I mean but it can totally be done. Also talking about buggy environments. That's a lot of the questions that I get from, people here locally. Like, hey, don't the bugs just eat you up? Nope, they don't, because I've got a bug net.
Yep. I actually just had that conversation a couple of days ago with a friend that I was talking to him about hammocks and everything. And he's like, what do you do about the bugs? It's like, well, I got hammocks. All my hammocks have bug nets with them. Yeah. Some zippered, some, bottom entry,
And I always soak my gear too, like with the permethrin. We have a little bit of that left over.
You got any?
Yeah, I think I've got gallons and gallons. Thank you, Sawyer, by the way.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll be set on permethrin for the foreseeable future and many more lifetimes after that. And I'm still giving it away like crazy, which is awesome. That Sawyer gave us enough that we can kind of spread that wealth. Because, I mean, if you have to buy it from the store, it can get pricey, and you have to treat your gear like every 6 weeks. But the spray bottle makes it really, really easy, and it takes care of the mosquitoes really well. Something else that it's really, really good for that I discovered this past summer, of something that we don't have in Florida, it does really well for black flies.
Really?
Which... Yeah, it's because I had never really experienced black flies, and I'm sure some of our northern friends are listening to this and just chuckling. I just assumed black flies were just a glorified house fly. No, they are not. They swarmed, and they were biting, like not just sucking blood. They were like taking chunks out of my legs.
Yeah, you'll literally see where they kind of pinch. I dealt with them.
I used some permethrin, and then some Picardin lotion repellent, and I hopped in my hammock, and that took care of. They dispersed, but they were not fun. They were not fun. I didn't almost deal with mosquitoes versus the black flies.
The black flies hurt.
Oh yeah, like whoa,
bad. Right?
And they swarm like gnats. That was something that I was not prepared for. Like, we have horseflies down here that'll, swarm and bite, and they hurt like the devil too. But these black flies were no joke. But so buggy environments, like we talked about, have a bug net. It's a lifesaver, especially if you're going into a really, really buggy time of year. Treat your gear with permethrin. Use Picardin if you need to, because I think one of the things for me that would always get me, even with a bug net, when I used to gather in, my shoulder would be right up against the bug net. And no matter what type of bug protection that I had, like my shoulder would get peppered. Almost looked like a shotgun blast. But I started using some Picardin lotion that actually Sawyer also makes that I bought, and it's really a great product. Put that on, and that took care of that. You do not want to use DEET.
That's what I was fixing to say. The Picardin does not mess with the fabric, whereas the DEET will deteriorate it, correct?
Yeah, correct. It's also much better for you to not use DEET.
I can't use DEET. I feel like I'm on fire whenever I put it on.
Yeah, it's weird.
I
really don't like the way that it feels.
Yeah, my skin starts to feel like it's burning.
Yeah.
So I don't even mess with it anymore.
So yeah, but that's something that we can totally do in a hammock. So number 2, hey, hammocks are complicated to hang up and set up. Is that true?
I don't think so. I mean, whenever I first started, got into hammocks, and the first couple of times I went out to set up, there was things that I had to learn. So, I didn't always get that perfect hang. I did have a couple of uncomfortable nights because I either set it up too tight, would have that shoulder squeeze, or, something. But I would always, if I had a bad night, I'd get up and adjust to fix it. But now that, with as long as I've been, setting up a hammock and everything else, it's a lot quicker than setting up a tent. And no more complicated.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a learning curve, a very steep learning curve in the grand scheme of things. But just like with anything, failure breeds innovation. And if you set it up in a way that you're not comfortable with, it's okay. Just adjust something.
Make adjustments.
We talked about, you want to make sure, especially if you're in a gathered in, that your foot in is a little bit higher than your head in. That helps with shoulder squeeze. It helps with the flatness in your lay. It helps with calf ridge. And if you're using a Blackbird XLZ, it helps make the hammock a significant amount more comfortable. We talked about using a ridgeline. Don't hang your hammock like a zip line. You want that sag. You want that slack. You're going to be much more comfortable that way and not put undue stress on your suspension as well.
Right.
But, I never really found hammocks necessarily complicated to set up. Some are more finicky than others, but
right.
even if you have them set up not in an optimal situation, they're never not comfortable per se. They're still a lot more comfortable than being on the ground.
Agreed.
And I never found them more complicated than a tent. Now, I've never done backpacking tents, but even just traditional car camping, I always hated setting up a tent. And again, that's not very hard, but it's just a lot of steps, and it just was always a pain in the butt just to kind of set up.
I mean, I've actually set my hammock up in the dark with no headlight because my headlight went out on me, and I was night hiking, and during my hiking, the headlamp just fizzled out, and it got really dark really quick in the middle of the woods, and I had to set my hammock up in the dark, and I had no problems in doing it. Where I think if I had a tent, it would have actually been more complicated because I wouldn't have been able to see what was on the ground.
Yeah.
And everything. But, that just goes to show there that, once you learn, how to set up a hammock, you can do it without really any issues.
Yeah, and I think also it goes to the practice. I mean, that's the case with anything. Yep. Not only setting up your hammock, but also setting up your tarp too. Being comfortable, yep. Being proficient in setting up that. The more that you practice, the more that is not going to be a complicated part of your adventure.
Yeah. Yeah. I always, especially, pay attention to the weather, and if I know that I've got bad weather, I always set my tarp up first, of course.
Yeah.
That way I got a dry place to hang everything else, not having to rush everything.
And also, like, if you're going to somewhere new, talk to people either on Facebook groups, hammock forums, drop us a message. We've been to a lot of places. And ask, what's the tree situation like? Is there a particular site on this campground that's better suited for hammocks than others? Read reviews. We've talked about Campsitephotos.com. That's a great website to just look at if you're booking a site and you're wanting to see kind of what the tree situation is. It's not going to give you a complete optimal picture, but it'll give you a decent idea of what that situation is like. And if you're car camping, when push comes to shove, I always have a stand.
Yeah. Yep. All right, so let's move on to number 3. Number 3 is hammocks are uncomfortable and you lay like a banana in one.
I can't tell you how many times that you have people that just assume that you lay in a hammock exactly like you would lay in a bed. And they make the comment, "Oh, I can't, you're bent up all the way like crazy." Now, this is the case with like bridges. You do lay like you would in a bed, but I would assume most people are getting into gathered ends.
Right.
And so I think that when people hear, "Hey, you need to lay in a diagonal," it's very counterintuitive than what they think it should be.
Right.
But when they actually, in practice, when they do that, it's a light bulb moment for them.
Yeah, that's one that I see. I think that's the one comment that I see more than any other. I'll see, on Facebook and all that. Somebody ask about a hammock, and you have other people comment, "Oh no, you sleep like a banana. It's uncomfortable, yada yada yada."
I can always like peg those people as like, "Oh, you haven't been hammock camping very long, or
right,
you've never actually been hammock camping."
Or those are the ones, like we've mentioned before, that they've gone to Amazon or wherever and got the cheapest hammock they could find on there. That's only like a 9-foot hammock, and of course they're not going to get a good lay in them.
Yeah. Or, I mean, I see people all the time at like state parks and national parks and private campgrounds. They'll throw up the hammocks, but they have them strung so tight and they don't have ridge lines. And so they're like a lounger. But if you're looking to truly get into using hammocks in the most comfortable way, whether you're just camping with them or just using them as a lounger for the beach, you can get so much more comfortable if you're hanging correctly and laying in them at a diagonal.
Right. All right. So what about this one here, AJ? Double hammocks are for 2 people.
Oh, people see double and they just automatically assume, "Oh, that means double the capacity."
Means 2.
That's not true. Well, I will say you better be super comfortable with the person that you are hanging in if you want a double to hold 2 people. And you're not going to be completely comfortable sleeping overnight. It might be cool just hanging out, snuggling with your significant other. But for a long-term napping or overnight situation, whew, that's going to be
someone's going to be on top
cramped.
of somebody.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And that's just because of the nature of the hammock. As you lay, it creates that downward pitch to the bodies, and the 2 bodies are going to go towards each other. I mean, that's just the nature of it.
There are legitimate 2-person hammock setups on the market. You've got to go specifically looking for them. With Dutch's Chameleon, they have a way that they can set up the double Dutch set up where a bug net can go over and the hammock can attach to each other, and you have a hammock for 2 people, even though technically it's still 2 hammocks. And you also have, I don't know the model. I'm sure you do.
Vertex.
The Clark
Vertex Ultra.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have 2. It's the Vertex Ultra and the VX. Both of those are two-person hammocks. But again, it's on the design. They're 2 hammock beds with 1 cover. So I mean, you're still, each person's in their own hammock. You just have the 1 cover over. So those are actual two-person hammocks.
Yeah, but if you're looking out for 2 hammocks and you think, oh, a double, it's just double wide. And even then, those aren't necessarily double wide. They're just maybe
It's just
a foot or so.
extra wide. Yeah.
It's
using the wider material.
And really, if you want a hammock for 2 people, just buy 2 hammocks.
Yeah. Buy 2 hammocks in a hive. There you go.
There you go.
All right, so this next one, AJ.
Oh man,
I'm gonna let you. This one is all you right here. Buddy.
Oh, this one's all me.
This one is all you. Hammocks are only for smaller and lighter people.
Oh.
Is that true, AJ?
Oh, if that's the case, then I would not be here right now. Oh man, no, this is absolutely not true in the slightest. Again, if you've been listening to the podcast for a long time, you know about kind of my weight loss journey a little bit. I was hammock camping when I was close to 450 pounds. I hammock camped at that weight in single layer and double layer, mostly in double layer just because I didn't like the stretch. But it can be even done in a single layer with certain fabrics. Now, granted, are there fabrics out there like your Cloud 71 that my butt at that weight would have got in? That's a negative. But again, I mean, for the sake of an argument, I'm approximately 220 pounds right now, and I still would not get in your Cloud 71. It's just a mental.
You're at 220 right now.
I am close to 220.
Now?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
You're actually smaller than me now, AJ. I'm 230.
Oh, okay.
230. Yeah.
Well, I mean, on a maybe a water retention day, I might be close to that. It kind of fluctuates. I'm around like 225. Yeah. It's definitely not true. You can, if you're talking about taller people, I'm 6 foot, so I can be comfortable in a 10 foot. I can be comfortable in 11 foot, and I've got a couple 12 foot that I like. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, I have a 8.5 foot hammock that I have on my back porch that I have fallen asleep in, and I have slept through the night in. So it's definitely not something that is limited to shorter people. And obviously, it's definitely not recommended only for lighter people as well. You can definitely get out there and enjoy the benefits of hammocks and hammock camping at any weight. Depending on if you are in some of those higher weight capacities, there's a few more factors that you got to put into as far as like your suspension and your fabric material, but it can totally be done. And most of the hammocks out on the market right now will still accompany you 350 pounds and over.
Yep.
I have never, ever, the entire time that I've been hammock camping, even at my highest weight, ever had a hammock body fail.
Right.
Suspension, maybe a little bit. But as far as a hammock body, never. And again, and that it encompasses both single layer and double layer.
I had a Cloud 71 hammock that I had fell on me, but then I ended up getting another one. So,
yeah, I'm
gonna get you to try it one day.
Yeah,
I'm gonna get you to try it one day.
They have both Dutch and Ripstop have higher weight fabrics that are kind of see-through right now. I know Dutch has the cloud fabric and Ripstop has the monolight fabric, and I'll just get one of those hammocks made with I think it's like a 1.5 weight, but you can still see through it. The Cloud 71, I can't do it.
Yeah, it's very light and stretchy.
It's just, yeah, I don't like the stretch for one, and it just seems too much of
I
a
like
not
it.
pro-life choice.
I like it during the hot months and just to lounge out in during the day. I actually think it feels good the way it stretches because it kind of hugs around you. But I don't know. I mean, I could probably sleep all night in it and it not bother me. But right now I just limit it to during the days. That way, whenever I'm awake, because that way, if I start to fall,
You're going to be awake for the sudden stop. I don't know if that's really going to help you.
I don't know. It's a mind thing, I guess. But I don't know.
So the next one that we have is hammocks don't have any storage for your gear.
Oh, absolutely none at all, right?
Absolutely none. Absolutely none.
None.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's different than a tent. Absolutely.
Yeah.
One thing that I hear a lot from tent campers is they like to kind of spread things out, almost like a yard sale kind of situation.
Yeah.
Which you can do. I mean, we've got ground cloths that I've got a couple of that you can spread them out there.
Gear slings.
Yeah, gear slings, which are great multi-purpose pieces of gear because you can use a gear sling as a pack cover, depending on what fabric that you make it out of. You can even use it as a hammock chair as well, and as a gear sling. So that's 3 different things that one piece of gear can do.
Ridgeline organizers,
peak bags. I'm blanking here. Saddle bags on your bridge hammocks and
and your chameleons.
You've got the sidecar, the side sling. Lots of different. When you're talking about the gear slings, you can have them so they hang under your hammock, that they hang the side of your hammock, and I've even made some smaller ones that go on your internal ridgeline that you can hang at the kind of the foot end of your hammock, that you can hold much larger things so they're not going to be in your face and not going to be in your way. But it's a different type of storage than you would in a tent, but there's plenty of options out there.
It's a more organized, storage.
Yes. Yeah.
Than like what we see with tent campers that like to, like you said earlier, make it look like a yard sale. They just go in and dump everything out of their pack and just kind of spread it.
Yeah. Which I kind of tend to do that in my hammock too, but I just dump it all over my ground cloth.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what the ground cloth is for. Right?
Absolutely. And to keep my feet clean.
Yeah. I still haven't found my orange one. It probably looks like your orange one, I'm sure.
Probably does. But I have 2.
It does.
I have 2.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, one's probably mine.
No.
I'm going to stick with that. I'm going to stick with that. That
still
one's
in my
mine.
truck.
It probably is. Probably is.
All right, our next one.
I'm going to rummage.
Hammocks are more expensive and heavier than tents.
Yes and no?
I would say yes and no.
I mean, it all depends on what you go with.
Again, I've seen some crazy expensive tents.
Yeah.
Especially if you're going with the Dyneema fabrics. Yeah,
the Z packs. So, I mean, that's what I mean by yes or no. I mean, you go with you want to compare a Coleman tent to a chameleon or something like that. Sure. It's going to be a hammock's going to be more expensive. But if you want to start comparing, apples to apples here, they're on par with each other as far as
another
price
thing
goes.
that I hear like people comparing to. So if I was looking at a cost basis, I would only consider the cost being the tarp and the hammock. Like I'm not talking I'm not talking quilts or things like that because that's a separate cost. When you're talking about hammock camping, yes, you've got your tarp, you've got your hammock, and you've got your quilts. But if you're talking about a tent, you still got your tent, which covers your hammock and your tarp because you got a rain cover
Yep.
for that. You've got your footprint that you have to lay out. You
Mhm.
actually have the tent or any accessories that you have for that. When you're
Then you
in a
have your
tent,
sleep bag and your sleep pad, which would be equivalent to the underquilt
yeah,
on a hammock. And then you have, which most of them will either use a sleeping bag or a top quilt, which
Yeah.
is the same, with us.
absolutely.
But I've noticed that a lot of times when hammockers say, oh, well, the hammock is more expensive, or not more expensive, but, heavier, they're not taking into consideration, their sleeping pad and stuff like that when they're adding the quilts on the hammock side.
Right. Yeah, I see that a lot too. And again, you're talking about you've got to compare apples to apples. Now, do I believe that like one is far superior as far as weight goes than the other? No. I mean, a hammock can be really, really heavy. It can be really, really light. But just like with a tent, you're going to add up a lot of things unless you're making a conscious decision to say, hey, I'm going to use a tent that only uses trekking poles as far as the structure. And again, there's pros and cons to that too.
And the way I look at that is, I mean, if that's the case, add those trekking poles into the weight of that hammock.
Yeah, that's true.
Or, no, not hammock, but tent. Because you have to have them to set it up.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, I mean, yes and no for that one. I think some cases they can be more expensive. And sometimes they can be heavier than tents, and sometimes they can be lighter. It really depends on your particular setup and your particular gear choices.
Yeah. Yeah.
But even if they are heavier, I'll still take comfort over weight.
Oh, definitely. Definitely.
Any day.
I mean, if I really wanted, I could go with my hammock gear, the Cuban fiber tarp without doors, just a standard, without doors, which is like right around 8 ounces, just over.
Something like that, yeah.
And the cloud hammock, which is 4.7 some odd ounces. So, 12, 13 ounces. There's my setup.
Yeah.
If I wanted.
That sounds like a crazy
if
light.
I wanted. But I'm not going to go on long trips with a cloud hammock.
Yeah. I would just like a little bit more the durability.
Yeah.
Not for me personally, I wouldn't want to have to always worry that I'm treating my gear with, kid gloves, because at the end of the day, if I've been hiking all day, I'm wore out. I'm not really not really thinking straight, but not really having to focus on, okay, I can't let this drag at all. If I snag something, even a pine needle, my fabric may fail. Now that might be an overstatement, but you kind of get the drift.
Sure.
Okay,
and,
our next one,
like you said a minute ago, I'm the same way. I will take a little extra weight for the comfort.
Absolutely. So our next one we see a lot when it comes to female hangers. I see this being brought up a lot. Hammocks provide no privacy. If you're just hanging in a regular hammock without any cover or anything, yeah, this is kind of true. It doesn't provide the absolute complete room that a tent would. However, there are definitely things that you can do to enhance the level of privacy that you have. We talked about in the first one with weather, per tarp with doors, especially full-length doors that you have in something like a Superfly, in a winter tarp from UGQ or Dutch or R&R. For full doors, you can get, you're still going to see your feet a little bit, but if you pitch it really low and you close the doors, you can get pretty darn close to the privacy that a tent provides.
Yeah.
Another really thing that I like to do, especially if I just want to drown out everything, and it's not too incredibly hot, a winter cover really cuts everything out. Like you can't even see inside the hammock. You can see that somebody's in there, but you can't see. I can change in my hammock and not have to worry about someone
Right.
looking in if I'm having a winter cover on. And it really is able to block out any viewers from the outside. Although I don't particularly worry about it most of the time, but that's just me. I know a lot of people have that as one of their major concerns of just being out camping in general.
I know I've changed several times in my Clark, just zip up the weather shield on it.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely options out there to increase your privacy versus just your single hammock. If you're only using a single hammock without anything, you're kind of exposed. So this is one that at face value is kind of true, but there's things that you can do to mitigate that open-endedness.
And if you're car camping, if you wanted, I mean, you could get one of the hammock tents, kind of like a hot tent.
Ah, yeah.
And have all the privacy you want. Have a whole room, with your hammock in there.
Absolutely.
All right, so that takes us to number 9. We got 2 left here. So number 9, you can't use a hammock without trees or above tree line.
So, I mean, I think this would probably be more up your alley. The first thing that kind of comes into my mind is the Tensa trekking trees and the Yobo Freedom Stand as far as hooking above tree line.
Yep. That's if you want to use a stand, of course. But most hammocks also can be set up on the ground to form a little bivvy.
Absolutely.
Using your trekking poles. Is it ideal? No. Is it something that will work if the situation arises and you find yourself above tree line temporarily? Yes.
Something that I've also heard from other people that have camped out west. I know when we were talking with Derek Hansen at HangCon, he's talked about hanging from rock formations.
Yeah.
As well. Especially if you're in a place where the tree situation is not optimal and there's some rock formations, it can totally be done.
Yep. I think Shug actually has a video on setting up a hammock on the ground.
Yes, he does. It's really, really good. I've not tried to do it. I've not had to be in that unfortunate situation, but that's another one of the reasons that I have a ground cloth. That way that I can have that, so I'm not worried about damaging my hammock being on, a rock or something that might compromise the integrity of the fabric.
Right. And I know there's certain hammocks also that are designed to be able to really be set up on the ground because they have the pole systems like the Clark, the Lawson, the Haven. Yep. So there are certain ones that are designed to be able to go to the ground as well and be more functional than just rigging a gathered end up on the ground.
Right. I think out of all my hammocks that I have, the one that I would probably be the most comfortable taking it to ground would be the Haven.
Yeah. Yeah. Definite. I can see that. All right. So that takes us to our last one, number 10. And I love this one. This one here, I laugh every time I see it because it just baffles me. And I see it all the time when you see tenters debating with hammockers you become a bear burrito when you're in a hammock. Now, how exactly is it any different other than you're hanging between trees than being in a tent? It's the same material for the most part. What did you call it earlier?
A meadow muffin.
A meadow muffin.
A meadow muffin. If I'm a bear burrito, then if you're in a tent, you're just a meadow muffin.
A meadow muffin. I love that.
Because a thin layer of nylon is not going to be the barrier that prevents a bear from eating you.
No, it's not.
There are so many other things that you can do to prevent that. Mainly, keep that Snickers bar in your truck or not on you. Hang your food away. Right. But that's going to be the same case no matter what type of camping that you're doing.
Right.
Even if you're in an RV. I know when we go out west, we go to a lot of places that are very bear aware. And we're kind of like that in Florida too, but the bears out there are significantly much more of a threat because they're significantly larger. But yeah, I mean, practice bear safe camping, whether you're in a tent, an RV, a hammock, or whatever, even a Jeep. That's just common sense as far as being pro-life of your life.
We know how common sense is most time, though, or a lot of times, I should say.
But yeah, like a lot of people that I've talked to, this is one of their major concerns, not just with hammocks, but just animals in general. 99% of animals out there are more scared of you than you are of them. And the entire time that I've been camping, even when I was camping, growing up, I've never ever had any issues with being attacked, except by mosquitoes. But never have I had issues with bears, even being out west. It's always in the back of your mind. And again, you make smart decisions. You don't make stupid decisions. But I'm not really worried about animals.
Yeah. I mean, and I don't think you're any less protected in a hammock than you are a tent. That's why every time I see that, I just shake my head and kind of laugh. It's like,
and really? I mean, especially like if you don't have a bug net or something on covering you, if you're attacked by a bear, which again is stupidly small, a percentage, you can get out of a hammock a lot quicker than you can a tent.
Right.
There's only one entrance and exits in a tent. At least there's two in a hammock, I guess.
Right and left.
Right and left, yeah. Yeah, I have to say, funny. Like, as far as animals go, probably the closest thing that I've been to, like, being necessarily in danger, and I wasn't. We were camping, and I may have told the story in the past. We were camping at Starkey Wilderness Preserve. Okay. And we had this very large boar that gave no qualms of being pretty close to Britt and I.
Oh, yeah?
And they still stayed the distance. But when we went to sleep that night, the next morning when we woke up, we had hog ruts literally all around the area that we were sleeping in, except for maybe like right outside the footprint of our tarp.
Really?
Yeah, so he was very, very close to us. But again, like, he didn't attack. Again, we weren't being stupid. I would say probably the biggest threat that I've dealt with is probably squirrels or raccoons. Raccoons are unforgiving. That would probably be the most aggressive animal that I've had to deal with. But
until you get them drunk.
Yeah, and then they become hilarious. And just so we don't intentionally try to get raccoons drunk, but if those little punks steal your drink and then they proceed to drink all of it, I am going to sit back and watch the little punk try to climb a tree completely drunk as a skunk for the next 20 minutes till he catches the smallest branch. It was hilarious. It was worth the drink.
I wish I had seen it. That would have been funny. I laugh every time y'all tell me that story, though. So, all right. Well, I think that's going to wrap it up, AJ, with the 10 most common myths, anyhow, that I think we hear most of the time. So, next couple of weeks, we have some more people lined up. I know we have a couple more YouTubers lined up. We have a couple more of our vendors lined up that we're going to be having on.
Yeah, we've got a really great lineup in the next coming weeks. And, we've got some other episodes that, we've talked about going back and forth. We're going to be doing an episode of talking about getting kids into hammocks, because I can talk about that experience with mine. I haven't converted my wife yet, but my 2 kids, they're totally on board.
Yep. I want to do an episode. If there's anybody out there that has been in this, I'm going to say been in this situation, I'd love for you to send a message so we can have you on. And that is somebody that was so reluctant to even start hammock camping. There was always, no, I'm not going to do it, not going to do it. And then finally did. And now they won't ever go back to any other way. So I'd love to talk to somebody about that, just to get their insight on it, as to, 1, why they were so reluctant, and then 2, why they now will not go back. I mean, I have a lot of ideas of why they won't go back, of course, but I'd love to hear firsthand from somebody like that. So if you're out there and you want to be on the show, just drop us a line. Go to our pod page, and which you can find that at hikingradionetwork.com, and fill out the guest form, and then we can get you on. So I guess it's going to be pretty much it, AJ. Just everybody, if you would, leave a review for us on whatever platform you're listening to us on, I should say, because your reviews are going to help us grow. Go to Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Give us a follow, and share.
Give us a
share with
thumbs
your
up
friends
on YouTube, like and subscribe. And that really helps us, get the word out, and helps us with the algorithms that YouTube is so famous for. And it really helps get the word out and brings more people to the podcast, which encourages us to keep this thing rolling.
Right. YouTube is actually changing some stuff also. I don't know if you've seen it yet, AJ, but YouTube is actually getting into the podcasting scene now. You can actually listen to podcast on YouTube Music now. And so, like, each one of these episodes, I upload it. Once it uploads to YouTube, I put it in the podcast category, and so it helps with the algorithms and all that stuff. But yeah, just share with your friends. Help us spread the word, and that way we can keep this going and hopefully get more people on, to talk about their experiences with hammock camping and everything. So I guess until next week, happy hanging, everyone.